Before taking the Rodrigues Regional Assembly Act, I would like to say one word about the National Savings Fund Act. I think there's some confusion about the retirement age of employees. I've seen in the press some are saying that with the amendment, an employee will no longer be able to retire at the age of 60 or before. I've not seen this. I don't know if I've missed something. I understand with the amendment, section 2B, 1A is now, I quote, in respect of a person aged 60 or more, retirement or otherwise ceasing to work on or before the pension age. Perhaps this needs more clarification because, you know, the BRP was before known as the old age pension. When it has become the basic retirement pension, it is confused with a retirement pension of employees. So maybe the confusion is there. I don't know. Maybe this needs clarification.
I'm sorry. One is contributory and the other one is not.
Yes. Madame la Présidente.
One is universal. One is universal, the other one is contributory.
Yes.
And if I may.
Madame la Présidente, maintenant je viens au Rodrigues Regional Assembly Act. Avec cette loi qui consacre l'autonomie de Rodrigues, un nouveau type de relation a été introduit dans la République. Une relation de partenariat qui s'élève les spécificités d'une partie de la République. Madame la Présidente, c'est dans l'exercice de la gestion qu'on acquiert la maturité. Rectifier le tir, se donner les moyens pour atteindre les objectifs fixés, fait partie de la normalité qu'on a la responsabilité de gouverner. Parfois, cela ne va pas sans souffrance et humiliation. Madame la Présidente, certains Rodrigues font preuve de démagogie en faisant croire que les amendements proposés par l'honorable Premier ministre portent atteinte à l'autonomie, tout en imputant cette soi-disant atteinte à l'autonomie aux actuels gouvernants régionaux. Comme l'a souligné l'honorable Premier ministre, ces amendements interviennent dans le cadre de la réintroduction du PBB, Performance-Based Budgeting, pour que Rodrigues soit aligné sur l'amendement de la Finance and Audit Act voté le 18 mars dernier. Madam Speaker, the present Rodrigues Regional Assembly Amendment Bill has the same explanatory memorandum as the Finance and Audit Amendment Bill of March 2025 to provide for, I quote, the introduction of performance-based budgeting, PBB, so as to, 1, link funds with results and outcomes and improve operational efficiency in government administration, and 2, enforce greater fiscal responsibility, accountability, and transparency. The preparation of estimates of expenditure based on programs and sub-programs on a free fiscal year rolling basis, specifying the resources to be allocated, the outcomes to be achieved, and outputs to be delivered, unquote. Madame la Présidente, on se rappellera que ce n'est pas la première fois qu'un tel amendement est apporté dans la Rodrigues Regional Assembly Act. Et c'était justement pour introduire le programme Based Budgeting en 2009, un concept introduit sous l'actuel Premier ministre, le PBB, qui a été abandonné après et qui a été réintroduit cette année. Madam Speaker, the Additional Stimulus Package Miscellaneous Provisions Bill number 1 of 2009 made provision for the introduction of a PBB in Rodrigues in 2010, and this required an amendment to the Rodrigues Regional Assembly Act. We can read in the answered debates of 7th April 2009, I quote, the draft amendments to the RRA Act have received the concurrence of the RRA in accordance with Section 75E of the Constitution. A certificate to that effect from the chairperson of the RRA addressed to the Honourable Speaker has been laid on the table of the National Assembly on the 31st March 2009, unquote. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank the Honourable Prime Minister for consulting the Executive Council of the Rodrigues Regional Assembly, which he said is agreeable to the amendments. The Honourable Prime Minister did it though he had no obligation to do so, if my reading is correct, as far as Section 75E of the Constitution is concerned, and the fact that he has the majority to go without. I think PBB is maybe the best thing to do. It focuses on results, on activities completed, benefits for end users. Funding is allocated based on predetermined results related to specific objectives. Progress is measured to demonstrate whether goals are being met. It is important to know how government policies translate into spending. It is about transparency, accountability, efficiency, and effectiveness. Waste must be eliminated. We must ensure that funds are allocated to programs that deliver value for money. Madame la Présidente, le PBB appelle à la responsabilité et à la transparence. La transparence accroît la confiance du public en s'assurant des résultats tangibles. Ces amendements arrivent dans un contexte et un but bien précis. Et I think that it's imputing motives to the Honourable Prime Minister, motives that are unwarranted, to think that these amendments have other objectives than to introduce the PBB. Ces amendements, Madame la Présidente, on appelle certainement d'autres pour éliminer les obstacles qui sabotent le implementing capacity de Rodrigue et influent sur les résultats. Ceci n'étant peut-être pas le forum approprié, nous aurons certes l'occasion d'y revenir. Je ne veux pas être plus long, Madame la Présidente, mes chers collègues. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Yes, Honourable Fourth Member for Port Bristol.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes. Madam Speaker, this must be the first time, I think, in parliamentary history, that the finance bill is being introduced in such haste. Such haste between the moment it is introduced to the House, only 1 week's notice, to amend 60, no less than 60 pieces of legislation. And of course, you will no doubt note haste because important documents, including the explanatory notes, existing legal provisions were only furnished to the House on the 25th of July, a few days ago. You may know, Madam Speaker, that for previous finance bills, including the last one, at least 12 days were given to honourable members to study it, together with the accompanying documents. To make matters worse, Madam Speaker, this finance bill is riddled with errors. Numerous provisions do not even tally with the explanatory notes. I will come to them. It is an inescapable sign of the amateurism that has plagued this entire budgetary exercise. Even more, Madam Speaker, the budget speech, as read by the Honourable Prime Minister on Budget Day, differs materially from the actual content of the finance bill on several key issues. It begs the question, who prepared the finance bill? I will ask, are these the so-called senior advisors that have seen their pay rise from 90,000 to now a staggering 230,000 rupees, plus 25% gratuity, amounting to 287,000 rupees a month? Are these the ones who have prepared it? If they have, they should be let go. The very spirit, Madam Speaker, of reading a budget speech to the nation is to bring hope, to showcase well-thought, coherent policy, to inspire confidence. Instead, this budget and this finance bill have done the opposite. They have generated confusion, contradiction, and uncertainty. Take, for example, clause 29 of the finance bill. We talk of property taxes on foreign investors. The initial policy regarding foreign investment, as it was read in the budget speech and as it was contained in the annexes, was far worse than what was actually made out now in the finance bill. I had myself raised the alarm over the introduction of a 30% capital gains tax on the transfer of residential property to non-citizens, which is found on page 42 of the annex bill, At paragraph 23b3, you will see. In addition to the doubling of land transfer tax and registration duty for promoters and foreign buyers. And these measures were to come into force immediately upon publication of the Finance Act, without any transition period, and then a reckless move to destabilize the property market overnight. There were countless number of applications, hundreds, on the desk of the EDB waiting for approval. Applications where commitments were already done. And these persons now were made to accept such horrendous increases. Overnight. And I checked my facts, because they were to come as from publication of the Gazette. They were to take effect. This is how it was read in the annex. I stated the relevant paragraph. I invite members to go and read it. So they were to come immediately upon publication of the Finance Act. So we scared away investors. We detailed a hostile policy to foreign investment. We stated we will tax you. We will introduce capital gains at a record 30%. We do not care if your application has sat for 8-9 months on the EDB's decks. You are also going to be made to foot the bill. That is what was stated, and fortunately has been changed. But it is the first time that a budgetary exercise, instead of promoting reasoned fiscal policy and measures that tie the nation together, has in fact had the contrary effect. And it is a good thing then that the government has backtracked on this. It is a good thing that the capital gains has been scrapped and is no longer part of clause 29. And it is a good thing that a one-year moratorium has been given to those persons. A one-year moratorium has been given under clause 29. You will see takes effect as from the 1st of July 2026, and not as from the publication of the Gazette. You will go and read for yourself. But, Madam Speaker, the damage has been done, and these changes come too late, and the confidence has been shaken already. So what was the point of frightening off foreign investors? And many have been frightened. We cannot really just quantify how many, but many have been frightened from the initial announcement to now the finance bill. And the question is, why? Madam Speaker, even more concerning is that under clause 44, which concerns Non-Citizens Property Restriction Act, it had been stated at paragraph 76 of the annex that government would ban not just the acquisition, but also the disposal of any property, so therefore would ban the sale of any property already owned by a foreign individual if same was located on state land or pas géométrique. In other words, foreigners who had legally purchased property would now be barred from reselling it, a measure bordering on expropriation. And it seemed that the Ministry of Finance was not even aware of the investment promotion and protection agreements that it has itself signed on behalf of Mauritius with no fewer than 29 countries, binding treaties designed to encourage and protect foreign investment, particularly from any form of deprivation or arbitrary restriction. How could you have ever thought that this would be reasonable or legal? The budget, Madam Speaker, would have been illegal. And this is why I say amateurism. A disregard for legal obligation, which has now greatly shocked that market, a prominent market which Mauritius, I stated before, relies heavily on. Let me turn to clause 39 of the Finance Bill, Madam Speaker, with regard to the National Pensions Act. You will no doubt have noticed, Madam Speaker, that changes are being brought to the Pensions Act. Changes which, you might be surprised, do not tally between the Finance Bill and the explanatory note. If you look at the explanatory note, that's page 49, you will see that the coming into effect of the BRP to the age of 65 is scheduled for 1st September 2030. In the Finance Bill, this clearly states September 2033. And this in itself has been contrary to what has been announced, either in the budget, in the annexes, the various and numerous statements on the issue, the various replies to PNQs, that it was meant to take effect on 2030, and now it's 2033. What has happened, Madam Speaker, is that now the years have been staggered to 2 years for every year that the retirement is going up. But, Madam Speaker, how can it be that the explanatory notes provided by the Ministry of Finance are different to the Finance Bill? How can it be? Such a mistake on such an important issue has made its way through such an important exercise. So, not only does it contradict the explanatory notes, but the Finance Bill also on that issue contradicts previous government announcement. Talk about oversight. And, Madam Speaker, even though this last-minute amendment to stagger the increase in eligibility aid has been made, it was not the original intention, but they were simply compelled, due to mass public demonstration, to change their tune somewhat. But let us be clear, Madam Speaker, this is still not acceptable. This is still not what was promised by your alliance, by this government, to the people of Mauritius. Be that as it may, Madam Speaker, the public does not care whether this increase has been staggered to after 2023, 2033, or 2030. What the people expected, and rightly so, was for government to show some of the sacrifices themselves, to come back to cut back on overseas travels and the per diems, which have reached record levels, to reduce on the purchases of new cars, and to roll back the astronomical 155% increase in senior advisors' salary. And these excesses has, it seems, become a source d'embarras for the government. There is no way that persons who had worked their whole life would accept to be deprived of 5 years of full pension, 1 million rupees, not even counting the annual increases with inflation. So how would you think that they would have accepted this? How? I could talk, Madam Speaker, of the latest episode we've heard today, the 1.1 million on the Pan-African Parliament that has been wasted. I could talk about how my PQ wasn't answered, but for lack of time, I will move on. Let me come to an important issue, the tourist tax, Clause 58, which is set to come into operation on the 1st October 2025. The first issue I'd like to raise is there is a drafting, an issue of drafting. At section 39B, the word accommodation is missing after tourist at the first paragraph. I think this should be corrected, obviously. But more importantly, section 39D1B requires managers or owners of tourist accommodations to remit the tourist fee electronically in euro to the MRA. And as you know, Madam Speaker, payments are often made in rupees, USD, South African rands to these tourist accommodation. It would force the first issue.
1 more minute.
Is foreign exchange cost. The second, given that it has to be transferred in euros, commercial banks charge an astronomical fee of 30 euros per transfer. So if you're paying, for example, for 10 nights for one person, 30 euros, you would pay the same in the transfer fee because the MRA's bank is at the SBM. So the question is now, how will the MRA make sure that this is workable in practice? Now, section 39C on the registration of tourist accommodations, it creates another hurdle. As I will no doubt the Minister of Land would agree, many accommodations today offering services of tourist accommodations are still awaiting for their leases to be converted from residential to industrial. And that bars them from being granted a license of tourist accommodation license from the Tourism Authority. And that is through no fault of their own. I'm concluding, no fault of their own. I will suggest, to grasp what the Honourable Junior Minister for Tourism has said himself, has proposed, which is a good idea, that in the interim, we grant those persons a provisional license whilst they wait for their conversion, which takes years, which has taken years under every government anyway, so that they be given a provisional license, a temporary license, so that they may have an insurance which will cover their liability, and so that they may be in accordance with law. It's not my idea, it's the one of the Junior Minister of Tourism. I think government should follow. It is not. I am concluding, but unfortunately. To conclude, Madam Speaker, there must be many more mistakes, inconsistencies, or plain contradictions in the finance bill, which I have not seen for myself, given the rush. But as with many things under this government, time will tell.
Yes, thank you very much, Honourable Duval. Honourable Mr. Francois, yes? Honourable Francois is going to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will briefly comment on two specific clauses of the Finance Bill number 18 of 2025, namely Clause 18, which amends the Finance and Audit Act in relation to RORIGS, and Clause 54, which amends the Statistics Act. And the majority of my intervention will focus on the RORIGS Regional Assembly Amendment Bill number 19 of 2025. Clause 18 of the Finance Bill amends Section 19 to add a new Section 3A to the Finance and Audit Act, requiring the financial statement be prepared in accordance, very important, with the International Public Sector Accounting Standards, IPSAS. The Director of Audit in his annual report 2023-2024 stated that in view of a challenge to move to accrual-based accounting, the IMF recommended a phased approach for the Rodrigues Regional Assembly transition to accrual IPSAS, and a roadmap was established, which the RA did not comply with. It is recommended that the RA must comply with IPSAS. Clause 19 specifically for audits provide to add a new subsection 8, which states, the commissioner responsible for the subject of finance under the Regional Assembly shall within 10 months, instead of 3 months, of a close of every fiscal year, sign and submit a consolidated financial statement in compliance with IPSAS. Madam Speaker, in addition, additional financial information requirements to financial statements, clause 3B3, provides to file a progress report on performance. This will ensure that project implementation stay on track financially and enable early detection of problems or deviations. As Speaker, clause 54, subclause 2A, 2 to 5, Statistic Act amended, introduce a new national statistics system so as to establish an integrated system for the development, production, and dissemination of official statistics in accordance with the Act and the United Nations Fundamental Principles of Official Statistics. The Honorable Prime Minister, in his budget speech concerning innovation, Honorable Soukron, and research, rightly affirmed his long-term vision for an innovative and inclusive Republic of Mauritius. Unquestionably, Statistic Mauritius will need to revamp national indicators to cover national, sectoral, and service-level government data and align with a national development plan. Madam Speaker, it is worth noting that the promotion of research and innovation and development relies heavily on accurate and reliable data. One of the emerging avenues for data capture, sharing, and addressing statistical needs is climate change today, and for us, a revamp of the Rodrigues statistics system with additional data. I won't go into the details. Madam Speaker, now allow me to address my main intervention on the technical, but how important the Rodrigues Regional Assembly Amendment Bill number 19 of 2025. Its primary objective is to amend 5 sections of the Rodrigues Regional Assembly Act to facilitate the reintroduction of performance-based budgeting, PBB. These reforms aim to link funds with results and outcomes, enhance operational efficiency in the administration of roads, and more importantly, enforce greater responsibility, accountability, stability, and transparency within any regional government governing roads. The introduction of PBB will enable regional government to shift focus from traditional line budget inputs to measurable results. I must also highlight that, given the current state of the local budget affairs, cafouillages et désordres, this program-based budgeting is more than necessary for roads. This will strengthen the legal, institutional, and financial framework needed to approve the effectiveness and efficiency of public expenditure from available funds allocated from national budget. Madam Speaker, let me now address the constitutionality of this RA Amendment Bill to clear any confusion or misunderstanding. By convention, there is no alternative but to proceed pragmatically with due respect to the constitutional provisions entrenching the Regional Assembly. I find reassurance in the respect and functionality of the autonomy of Rodrigues as affirmed by the Honorable Prime Minister, who stated that, and I quote, "The Executive Council, the actual one, of the Rhodes Regional Assembly has been consulted and is agreeable to the proposed amendments," unquote. Madam Speaker, this bill will enable the Rhodes Regional Assembly to prepare in 2026-2027 budget estimates using the new PBB framework. The House will recall that the first transition from output-based budgeting to program-based budgeting by Regional Assembly occurred in 2009, rightly stated by Honorable Edouard, and amended in 2015, which faced several implementation challenges. The then Chief Commissioner, following approval of the amendment by the central government, moved a motion in his name stated, and I quote, "that the Regional Assembly concurs with the amendments of the Rhodes Regional Assembly Act as proposed by the central government to enable the introduction of program-based budgeting pursuant to Section 75E of the Constitution of the Republic of Mauritius," end quote. This motion was debated, approved, and concurred with by the Regional Assembly. Let me cite the Article 75E, which stipulates that any law giving effect to this chapter and to any incidental matters shall not be altered without the concurrence of the Regional Assembly unless such alteration is supported at the final voting in the National Assembly by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all members, unquote. Therefore, the implementation of this bill will require, alongside the concurrence of the Regional Assembly, certain amendments to the Regional Assembly standing orders and rules. Locally there. As Speaker, you will agree with me that any government has power, but misuse of that power and poor policy decisions are unwarranted and pose risk to our society. The present amendment to the Regional Assembly Act is not only a reform towards a PBB approach from pragmatism and practicality, but also a meaningful, responsible, and productive piece of legislation that promotes good governance. Madam Speaker, the principal accountability of government domains and functions to Parliament will enable us as parliamentarians to raise concerns about proper political choices, objectives, and the rational planning and allocation of resources. For example, let me substantiate that. If a vulnerable person is waiting for years to obtain a social housing, while government decides to prioritize unwarranted purchase of 147 million worth of vehicle now lying idle with no drivers or qualified operators, despite budget provision of only 33 million, this highlights waste and misallocation. PBB will also redress procurement collusion between politicians and civil servants. Madam Speaker, the new Section 21A at Clause 18 of the Finance Bill outlines the overall responsibilities of accounting officers precisely at Subclause B to provide for effective and appropriate steps to prevent unauthorized, irregular, and wasteful expenditure. And the House will also recognize the seriousness of a regional situation, as the Honorable Prime Minister stated in his reply to my PQ B650, that the Chief Commissioner Office of the RA issued a circular in June 2025 on procedures of reallocation that are not consistent, Madam Speaker, that are not consistent with the Ministry of Finance policies and principles on virement. This issue stems from the line item budgeting, which leads to abuse and the reckless use of funds resources. In that regard, I commend the Honorable Prime Minister's proposal to address this management of public finance, including collaboration between his Ministry of Finance and the RRA to issue a revised circular on virement. I'm informed of excess of virement of more than 30% to the last budget for unprecedented non-spent capital budget, whereas the allowable limit is only 2%. It is witnessed that public administrations and the public pressure blindly follows political instruction without complying with established rules and regulations. Madam Speaker, to substantiate same, how can a construction project for constructing, so that you have a picture what I'm saying when the seriousness of this matter. Constructing approximately 26 parking lots, 200 meters of masonry, coastal protection, including demolition and construction, and a new 15 meters jetty, which was not budgeted during last financial year, no request for proposal, no Ministry of Finance financial clearance, through, and was awarded to a contractor through works orders and the budget item roads at a cost of exceeding 40 million rupees to the expense of announced budgeted roads projects like Montagne Cabri, Pauvre Montagne Cabri, and Montagne Malgache to Posides. I put it clear, I'm not opposed to any development projects in road, Madam Speaker, but the procedures, financial procedures applied are problematic, leading to uncontrollable and unpredictable budget decision. This Regional Assembly Act Amendment Bill comes at an opportune time for sound fiscal planning and greater budget credibility. As the saying goes, c'est une occasion pour mettre bon load dans des autres gestion finances publiques dans Rodrigue. Chaque roupie dépensée, bien dépensée. Now, Speaker, I hope that the recent and warranted, illegal and politically motivated regional budget increase without cabinet concurrence, violating established practices and convention of technical discussion and agreement between the Ministry of Finance and the RRA, will once and for all become thing of the past. This will mark a full stop. I hope PBB will mark a full stop to the abuse of our local public finances and hope to remedy the erosion of an intergovernmental trust from political propaganda like your Lord Zambidzi exantas. We've got to be responsible and serious, especially with regards to the autonomy of Rodrigues, whom our fathers and mothers, sisters and brothers have fight for, to give identity to Rodrigues, to weave the people of Rodrigues. And today, when we see some people salir cette autonomie, Madame la Présidente, et vous savez qu'est-ce que ça me fait, comme un Rodriguais, responsable, et aussi tous ces gens à Rodrigue qui sont conscients de l'avenir de Rodrigue, de demain, avec des gens responsables. Un speaker, let me conclude.
Yes.
In its political combat for Rodrigues, I'm concluding. Yes, in its political combat for Rodrigues' autonomy, the OPR aspires to leave a legacy of an exemplary and model Rodrigues for future generations. PBB is one of the right path to end political misappropriation of Rodrigues' future while preventing the population from being kept in the dark by complacent behaviors and opaque decisions. PBB is not only a necessity, but an urgent need that the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, and my honorable colleagues will agree with me. Surely, the Regional Assembly Amendment Bill will link funds with results and outcome, improve operational efficiency of Rodrigues administration, and enforce greater fiscal responsibility, accountability, and transparency. Madam Speaker, I'm confident that this August Assembly will unanimously vote in support to this Regional Assembly Amendment Bill of 2025 as proposed by the Honorable Prime Minister and the Government. I can also assure the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, and the House that the OPR party at the Regional Assembly will have no quarrel on any motion of concurrence in the interest of good governance for Rodrigues and the success of our autonomy. Madam Speaker, with these words, I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Honourable Member, you were right on time. You were right on time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Honourable Damri, please.
Madam Speaker. The amendments in the Finance Bill set a clear policy and direction for our long-term public finances and our economy. It's important, this clarity of vision is that public finances will henceforth be growth-led revenue rather than tax-led revenue. This is a stark demarcation from what the MSM did for 10 years. They printed money, they imported inflation, they applied consumption tax, they applied devaluation tax, they applied inflation tax at the detriment of the citizen. And this is what we are changing. Growth-led revenues are very important because it's growth that sustains the viability of our social system, be it pensions, be it education, be it social housing, be it healthcare. And I think it's time to put one matter to rest. The MSM government clearly intended to terminate all CSG allowances on 30 June 2025. And I'd like to quote paragraph 30B, subsection 3 of the Social Contribution and Social Benefits Act 2021. The income allowance shall be payable, it's about income allowance, the income allowance shall be payable to an eligible individual directly in his bank account at the beginning of each month for the month of, hear it, July 2022 to June 2025. It cannot be clearer than that. Now, when we come to the social contract, the spirit of our pension reforms is very clear. It's aligning payment age to retirement age, and it's phased over 5 years. Now, for the benefit of our youth, we are building that bridge to the future. And I'd like to once again to shed some more light on the policy. The policy is to develop and promote outlier growth revenues, while at the same time consolidating recovery and resilience revenues. Let me illustrate it through 4 amendments in the Finance Bill. The Banking Act and the Bank of Mauritius Act provide for KYC institutions. The Bills of Exchange Act provide for electronic bills of exchange. The Economic Development Board Act provides for innovative Mauritius scheme. And the Income Tax Act provides for virtual asset service providers. To the layman, it may sound that each of these proposed amendments have individual intended consequences. However, when put together, the sum of these amendments and the sum of these intended consequences, they provide a giant leap in our economic policy. They provide for the digital and AI economy. But we will not see the benefits of these amendments today because the previous government has done nothing for the past 10 years. And allow me to illustrate, because we're talking about strategy. Earlier, the leader of the opposition said that we don't have a strategy for tourism. Hang on. We have a strategy not only for tourism, but for the entire economy. So let me make some reference. Let us learn from what's happening in the global economy. Last year, 2024, the Nobel Prize winner for economics, MIT Sloan professor, Darren Acemoglu, wrote a paper called The Macroeconomics of AI. And in that paper, he kind of studied the impact of AI on global economies. Goldman Sachs said that productivity gains could be anything around 1% of GDP, global GDP, say $7 trillion. McKinsey said the productivity or impact of AI could be anywhere between 1.5% to 3.5% in terms of productivity gains. And Singapore, they are estimating that the productivity gains over the next few years will be up to 18% of their GDP. So just imagine if in the years to come, we make even a 1% productivity gain to our GDP through the measures that we are setting out today. That's 1% GDP gain. And what Singapore is very good at doing, they are also creating a springboard to be in the supply chain of AI services. And Mauritius is well poised to do that. And if we do that, we add another 1% to our GDP. All of a sudden, that's 2% to our GDP. The reason I said it's outlier growth, because these sectors are meant to grow exponentially. 6%, 7%, 8%, 9%, 10%. That's the kind of growth that we can expect from these sectors. But in the meantime, while we invest in that, while we prepare, we have to ensure economic growth through recovery and resilience sectors. And there are two sectors. The first one is property development. What the previous government did was 10 years of property sales. They had no clue what to do in productive economies. Because this government, we want to create jobs. We want to bring forex in our country. And when speaking about property, it was clear that no one is above the law. Even the government is not above the law. We cannot, this government could not, like the previous government did, subject this nation to another Betamax or another Patel Engineering by not following the law. That's one of the reasons why we grandfathered smart city regulations and other property regulations. That's the reason why we had to bring these amendments to the finance bill. And the second reason is, while developing the new economic sectors, the new economic order, we have to ensure that we get at least 3 to 4% growth, as we have estimated in our medium-term outlook. The second sector is, of course, the global business sector. And here I'd like to touch upon, Honorable Utim said it very well. In fact, both of us have been professionals in the financial services sector for the past 20 years before, at least me before getting in this house. And this is a sector we know very well. And the leader of the opposition talked about the qualified domestic minimum tax topper. Honorable Utim explained it very well. And the OECD, the G20, they adopted these GLOBE rules, Global Anti-Base Erosion Model rules. And what it means is that 15% in your country, but if you're paying 3% here, then you have to pay the balance in another country. And at the same time, you know, like MNEs, big MNCs, any MNC, any business for that matter, any investor for that matter, they always need clarity and certainty. I will not share the name, but I had a discussion with one of those MNCs in Mauritius. And they were worried because they had no clarity of what was Mauritius' position with regard to QDMTT. Because 131 countries in the world have subscribed to it. So you cannot have investment if you do not have certainty. This is one of the things that this amendment is bringing. The leader of the opposition said that such MNCs would go to Singapore and to UAE, if I heard well. Well, let me, for his knowledge, advise. Singapore adopted the QDM duty law in 2024, the Multinational Enterprise Minimum Tax Act 2024. The UAE adopted the same law through a cabinet decision number 142 of 2024. So they've done it before Mauritius. We are playing catch up. We've been playing catch up in every growth area, Madam Speaker. And this is what this finance bill is trying to remedy. Let me now also add one thing, that the proposed amendments in this finance bill, they will provide for a sound ESG, environment, social, governance, risk-adjusted macroeconomic fundamentals. What this means, that international institutions will always look at us with a lot of attractiveness. And the leader of the opposition made reference to foreign currency. So we are proposing an amendment in the Income Tax Act where businesses earning more than 50% of their revenues will pay their tax in foreign currency. These are measures that should have been brought in way earlier, but they have not. Madam Speaker, I don't think I will speak more because the Prime Minister, Honourable Rezauti, canvassed the finance bill so well, but I always like to end with one or two short stories that inspire me, and maybe they can inspire you too.
You have a bit of time.
That's all right. I think. Let me tell the story. So you have the nation, the Mauritius nation. The Mauritius. No, I will not. But okay, since you told me I have a bit of time, three very short stories.
Yeah.
The first thing is yes. The first it's important. No, it's I know I.
Let him speak.
Let me speak. I know why the leader of the opposition went. So I'll ask the House a question. What is the average IQ of a normal human being? The average IQ of a normal human being. It's about 122. Right? Elon Musk and Einstein, their IQ is about 155.
That's it.
Guess who else has this IQ? AI. And guess what is happening to the IQ of AI? It will keep doubling over the next 6 months. This is the prediction. And this is why the pace of change, the velocity of change will be so rapid that we have to adapt. And I'm glad to say that now the Prime Minister will be happy because we have a leadership that adapts to change. And and there are two stories that I'd like, one for the nation and one for us. The nation has stood with us. The nation has always stood with the motherland whenever the motherland has needed its children. So since we are speaking about the economy, you have Jack Ma. Jack Ma always talks about entrepreneurs in this way. He says, today will be difficult. Tomorrow will be even more difficult. But day after tomorrow morning will be very beautiful. Unfortunately, most of the people give up. They give up tomorrow afternoon. They don't wait till day after tomorrow morning. And I'm very happy, and this really touches me, that the nation is with us, and together we will rise, the nation, this government, the whole nation, after 3 years when we have redressed our economy based on our budget outlook. And the one commitment that we can make to the nation, and this is, the Prime Minister said that, He does not promise to take the nation to heaven, but he certainly will not take the nation to hell. And I can tell you, this is what Thomas Edison said. I did not find 10,000 ways that worked, but I will keep trying till I find that one way that will work. And this is what we'll do to support the Prime Minister, to support this government. And with this, I commend all the 3 bills to the House. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Jitan.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in this august assembly with a sense of deep responsibility and purpose to support the Finance Miscellaneous Provision Bill 2025. This government was entrusted with a historic mandate, not only to reverse a decade of drift and to rebuild fiscal credibility, but also to reignite economic dynamism and to inspire confidence and hope in the future of Mauritius. Madam Speaker, one of the key objectives of the Finance Bill 2025 is a total reset of our economic model, starting with fiscal consolidation. That is, reducing government deficits and improving the fiscal balance. So we could either cut public spending or increase revenue or do both. And as a responsible government, restoring investor confidence is paramount to achieving the challenging revenue targets set by this budget. Push too hard on the revenue side and the perceived tax burden becomes too high, and we face the risk of losing investor confidence, which then can lead to a direct negative impact on growth. Some of the changes to the finance bill that I will be talking about are to avoid that situation. So just as social safety nets were introduced to protect the vulnerable groups through the income support allowance, it is also important that our revenue side fiscal measures do not dampen growth. Madam Speaker, we have an inclusive and responsible approach to governance. We listen to the voice of the people. We listen to the voice of enterprises. And we are therefore introducing a number of refinements and clarifications to this bill. These changes reflect the valuable feedback received from various stakeholders. They reaffirm our commitment to getting the details right, to ensure that reforms are not only ambitious, they are fair, they are practical, and they are implementable. So, Madam Speaker, allow me to highlight the key amendments relating to the financial services sector. First, under the Income Tax Act, with regard to the fair share contribution for businesses, global business entities are exempted. I wish to draw the attention of the House to some important clarifications brought with respect to foundations and trusts, which are the two cornerstone structures in our global financial services architecture. The Finance Bill provides for the harmonization of treatment of these entities under the Income Tax Act, ensuring that they benefit from the same legal clarity and fiscal predictability afforded to global business license holders. So by replacing the term global license with global business license, the bill ensures that foundations, trusts, and similar fiduciary structures are appropriately included in our tax and regulatory framework. These measures strengthen Mauritius' status as a trusted and innovative jurisdiction for wealth management, succession planning, and philanthropic capital, particularly for Africa and Asia, where such instruments are gaining relevance. Let me immediately reassure the House that the principle of the source of chargeable income will be respected. So trusts and foundations with chargeable income from domestic activities will not benefit from this exemption. Second, Madam Speaker, the Finance Bill legislates key revenue-raising measures from the budget, including the introduction of the fair share contribution and the domestic top-up tax as part of our commitment to align the OECD Pillar 2 global minimum tax rules. We understand that parts of the industry have expressed concerns about the potential impact of these measures on competitiveness. The QDMTT provisions did create some cause for concerns and uncertainty in the industry, given that many countries, such as the US and India, have not yet implemented these rules. However, as the Prime Minister clearly emphasized the other day, consultations will be held with the industry stakeholders and regulations will be made to make provisions for exclusions and incentives to give relief to companies that become liable to the global minimum tax. This provides the much needed clarity and assurance to global businesses set up in our financial services sector. It improves legal certainty and reduces the risk of ambiguity for affected taxpayers. Bottom line, it safeguards the attractiveness and competitiveness of the Mauritius international financial sector. Third, Madam Speaker, the next amendment concerns the Value Added Tax Act to bring clarity on the banking sector. We are expressly clarifying that the 35% cap on chargeable income applies solely to domestic banking business and not to global business. Madam Speaker, the financial sector in Mauritius remains the largest contributor of corporate tax of our national revenue, underscoring its vital role in sustaining our fiscal framework. The sector contributed some 15 billion in corporate tax, that is more than 68% of corporate tax. The banking industry continues to report good level of profitability, which supports the merit of proposal to increase taxation on banks. However, we must recognize the inherent duality of the Mauritian banking industry, which necessitates a nuanced approach to taxation policy. On one hand, the domestic banking sector remains dominated by two large players. If we are to promote greater competition in this sector, particularly encouraging participation from international banks in our domestic market, we must ensure that taxation policies are not detrimental to this objective. So a differentiated taxation approach is therefore essential, with a cap of 35% for domestic banking operations being justified to maintain competitive conditions that can attract new entrants while ensuring fair contribution from profitable institutions. On the other hand, the global banking sector of the Mauritian banking industry relies heavily on the attractiveness of the Mauritius International Financial Center as a jurisdiction of choice. High taxation levels will make returns less attractive in this segment and may prompt international banks currently using Mauritius to channel their resources to other more attractive or tax-efficient jurisdictions. Not only this could undermine our strategic position as a leading financial hub, but it will also go against our agreed strategy to position this sector, which is already the first pillar of our economy, into a major engine for growth. Therefore, while there is clear merit in increasing taxes on banks, given their strong profitability, we advocated for a differentiated taxation policy that recognizes the distinct dynamics of our domestic and global business banking sectors. This, Madam Speaker, it was important to clarify this. This approach will ensure we maximize fiscal revenues while preserving the competitiveness and attractiveness that has made Mauritius a preferred financial services destination. The fourth amendment, Madam Speaker, is under the Economic Development Board Act, where the salary threshold for occupation permit regime is being adjusted to 30,000 rupees. It is no secret that the financial services sector is entirely dependent on highly skilled staff. And it is also no secret, and we have outlined that in our strategy report in 2025-2030 for the sector, that there are major human capital gaps in the sector. So while measures will be taken to mitigate this situation in medium and long term, it is important to recognize the need of the industry in the short term. For example, the unique structural model and operational characteristic of fund administration in our global business sector requires fund accounting professionals. And this change therefore ensures that Mauritius can avail itself of talent in specific sectors to remain competitive and aligned with international fund servicing norms. Madam Speaker, last but not the least, I wish to draw the attention of the House to a significant clarification affecting the real estate and property development sector. In fact, this industry should not be seen in isolation. It is very intricately linked to the financial services sector, as many of the non-citizens who buy properties in these schemes administered by the Economic Development Board are also investors in our global business structures. It is therefore important to understand the life cycle of a real estate project that can take up to 4, 5, 6, 7 years from concept design to feasibility to marketing, having to secure more than 75% of funded reservation with deposits to secure the Garantie Financière d'Achèvement, the GFA, and get all the permits before they can even start digging for construction. Many foreign investors relocate their businesses to Mauritius through the global business sector. They also relocate with their family, and they put in a deposit and have to wait for years before they actually take possession. So there was need for some certainty in this sector. The bill therefore introduces transitional provisions in the form of grandfathering arrangements to protect ongoing projects. This grandfathering mechanism is essential to maintain investor confidence, mitigate uncertainty, and ensure that strategic long-term developments in the sector are not being adversely impacted. It also aligns with global best practices in safeguarding pre-existing contractual commitments, particularly in jurisdictions where property development is a major source of FDI. And we must also not forget the direct linkage not only to the financial services sector, but also the multiplier effect that these buyers have on the wider economy. Madam Speaker, these refinements reflect our conviction. They show that this government leads by listening and governs with both ambition and precision. By pairing bold reforms with thoughtful transitional measures, we are demonstrating maturity, responsibility, and fairness in policy making. This is how lasting, inclusive reform is done, with clarity and consultation. With this bill, we are making choices not for popularity, but for posterity. We are choosing bold reforms over political convenience, substance over spectacle, and strategic foresight over short-term fixes. All this for the betterment and future of the nation. Madam Speaker, the Finance Bill is not only about legislative changes. It is about credibility, it is about purpose, it is about ambition. It is about the kind of country we wish to be, transparent, forward-thinking, and resilient. It is about the confidence we must inspire among citizens, but also confidence about investors and our partners. This bill is also not merely about laws, it is about leadership. It is not just a collection of amendments. It closes the chapter on a decade of decline and opens a new chapter grounded in economic reality, in hope, and in future prosperity built on solid foundations. We are not here to be populist. We are here to govern by principle, with empathy and responsibility. History will retain, Madam Speaker, that this government, led by a bold and courageous Prime Minister and a Deputy Prime Minister, and all my colleagues in this House here, who had the audacity to choose a path that was albeit the most difficult one, but it was the right one. As I said, we are not here to be liked, but we are here to lead. With this, Madam Speaker, I am very proud of the vision and courage that this bill presents, and I invite the House to lend its support so that we can convert legislative intent into transformative impact. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Boulel?
Madam Speaker, I move for adjournment of debate.
Yes. The question is that the debate be now adjourned. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. C'est tout. Adjournment.
Yeah.
Adjournment.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I beg to move for the adjournment of the House to Friday, the 1st of August at 3 p.m.
Yes, the question is that the House be adjourned to Friday. Which date did you say? 1st of August at 3 p.m. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. The ayes have it. The House stands adjourned. It was seconded, huh? Seconded. It was seconded.